Okay, all sisters and brethren that are here, we're going to start the program. So I'm going to turn the time over to someone who we all know and love, our own brother, Bishop Welch. Brother Bishop Welch. Teacher, administrator, doctor.
Wow. Well, it's wonderful to be here tonight, and thank you everyone, especially committee members, for putting this great event together, and the good food, wow, and the decorations, really quite amazing. I brought some of my best friends with us tonight, and we look forward to telling you what's been going on for the last, well, it's only been about 3.5 years really at Book of Mormon Central, and I think you'll be amazed to learn some things about what we've been trying to accomplish to spread the word of the Book of Mormon worldwide, especially to the millennial, the younger generation. I know you've heard a little bit about Book of Mormon Central. I'm sorry I wasn't in the testimony meeting, Jan, this beginning of August, when I understand that a testimony was born about Book of Mormon Central, right? And that was not a paid commercial, but I think it was very effective and very good. And so I think that part of that was the reason why Suzanne wanted to say, well, let's hear more about what was so impressive about Book of Mormon Central, and that reaction is really not that unusual. When people see what we've done, what do we hear usually? This is amazing. This is astonishing. This is wonderful. It's hard to come up with superlatives, as you'll see, to describe the kind of work that Neil and Jasmine and Jonathan and a lot of others have been doing to make this possible. I want to also say that Book of Mormon Central really started right over here in this hall, right outside of the multipurpose room, when John Covey and I came out of High Priest once. This was, I think, about 3.5 years ago. And John and I got talking, and John said, why don't people know all of the things about the Book of Mormon that are available? And I said, well, John, there's so many websites and there's so many places and the materials are so scattered. But we know these things, and there's got to be a channel, a way in which we can pull everything together, put it all into a library, get it into an archive, make it searchable. But, then it's not just enough for people to be able to get information. They need to know why it's important. They need to know what's it about. The 20-somethings in the church, they have questions. And in fact, Elder Ballard, not too long ago, told us all that the why questions are the most likely to result in inspiration and revelation for you. So you ask, why, Lord? Why is it this way? Or why should I do this? Or why did it happen this way? And then you're open to answers that are really interesting and relevant to what you need. But I was talking to John and said, we've got information overload out there with everybody having so much material. We need to help them understand more about why and what it's all about. And that's where Book of Mormon Central actually got started. And it's appropriate, Jane, that we've got now is this Moroni or Mormon? We were just debating what.
I don't know.
You don't know, okay. Well, if you don't know.
Jack, you say, and that's what we'll say here.
Well, then I need to study it a little more, but my guess is that it's probably Moroni because the plates look like they're pretty well finished. Anyway, what a wonderful statue, and this was done for the Coveys by one of their missionaries in Australia. And I think, as far as Jane knows, it's the only one of those statues anywhere in the world. So enjoy that, and it's appropriate because of John's involvement and the support of a lot of people in this ward that have made this possible. So what's our mission? Well, first of all, making the Book of Mormon readily accessible. And with a worldwide mission, this doesn't mean English only. And you're going to learn some things about Book of Mormon Central in Spanish, and we hope someday in Portuguese and lots of other languages. But our mission is to make the Book of Mormon understandable, to let people build their testimonies of the truthfulness of the Book of Mormon, make it relevant in their lives, and help the Book of Mormon to fulfill its mission, which is to convince everyone in the world that Jesus is the Christ. Right on the title page, that's what it claims for itself. Now that's a major mission when you especially think of the billions of people that we'd like to be able to reach. But with the internet and with YouTube and websites and apps and all of this, well, we can show you what's coming up. So we most of all want to build enduring faith in Jesus Christ through the Book of Mormon. And the church has been very cooperative with us. For one thing, they have given us complete access to the digital version of the 4 standard works. So we have the most current version of the Book of Mormon, all of the footnotes, all of the Bible, all of the topical guide, everything that we can just access directly. Why? Why would the church do that? We're actually the first organization that they have given that permission to, but we're not the only one anymore, because the church is wanting allies to help to get the word out. There are only so many things and so many audiences that the church can reach directly. But through organizations like Book of Mormon Central, we can help to push that forward. But they also know that one of the things that we will always do with whatever we publish and put out on the web, we don't want to take people away from the Book of Mormon. We want to bring them back into the Book of Mormon. We start at a point where people have a question, or they're trying to figure out how to use a particular passage in the Book of Mormon, or what does this mean? And we'll take them on a journey through the scholarship and through the general authorities talks and through all of the etymologies of words, or whatever would be helpful to explain the answer to that question. But then we bring them right back to where they left off in the Book of Mormon, so that we don't take them away from the Scriptures, but help them now to come back to the Scriptures with a stronger testimony and understanding of what it is that that book is telling them. So with that, let me ask Neil to come up. Neil was one of the engineers of the Know Why series. And Neil, why don't you tell them why they need to know about Know Whys?
All right, sure. I'm a little shorter than Jack, I'm afraid. Oh, yeah, that's actually... Okay. Anyway, so yeah, this is just a quick screenshot of our website. How many have actually been to bookofmormoncentral.org at this point? So this should look pretty familiar to you. And what you see right here at the top, across the big banner, is our latest Know Why that we published literally just today in this case. As you go down through the website, you'll see you get several of our more recent website or Know Whys. Jasmine, if you'll go ahead. And then if you go to the actual Know Why page, you'll find just literally hundreds of these. 466 is how many we've published right now. What a Know Why is, is anybody familiar with what Know Whys are? Yeah, they're short articles. Jack talked about the purpose of Book of Mormon Central being to bring together a lot of this good material that's out there. We realized, though, that there was another step that needed to be taken, because a lot of people, Jack did a lot of wonderful things in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s in helping produce lots of very thick scholarly books and long articles, right, on this stuff. But we realize today a lot of people aren't reading big, thick, scholarly books and articles. We want them to, but they don't necessarily. And so we decided one thing we need to do was bridge that gap a little bit. And so the purpose in a lot of No Whys are to summarize what's in those big, thick books and hopefully get people interested enough in the topic that they go and do a little more digging and a little more reading. But we publish them as these short articles on the web, and they also often have videos that accompany them and other things to help enrich the learning experience. And one of the things we've actually done with a lot of No Whys is we've focused on how different women have contributed to bringing the Book of Mormon forth and spreading the Book of Mormon through the world. So I'm just going to talk really quickly about one No Why we did on Emma Smith and how she contributed to bringing the Book of Mormon forth. Is anybody is that maybe news to anybody that Emma Smith actually wasn't just married to Joseph, but she actually helped in bringing the Book of Mormon forward? Is that news to anybody? Yeah, it's kind of cool. It's really exciting, actually. She contributed in a number of different ways, and actually I'm just going to have you watch the video that we did for this No Why real quick to give you a quick summary of that. Thank you, Jasmine. Maybe? Oh.
In more ways than some may realize, Emma Smith stood side by side with her husband in bringing forth the Book of Mormon. For example, she accompanied Joseph to the hill where the plates were buried, watched him go up the hill empty-handed, and then saw him return hours later with the covered plates. Emma was also Joseph's first scribe. In her own words, she explained that Joseph would dictate to me hour after hour, and when returning after meals or after interruptions, he would at once begin where he had left off, without either seeing the manuscript or having any portion of it read to him. This was a usual thing for him to do. Emma remembered that she was often sitting at the table close by him, he sitting with his face buried in his hat with the stone in it, and dictating hour after hour with nothing between us. She insisted that Joseph had neither manuscript nor book to read from, and that if he had anything of the kind, he could not have concealed it from me. Emma's descriptions of the translation offer a unique window into how this miracle unfolded day by day. Emma's value as a witness is enhanced because of her physical interaction with the tangible plates. She reported to her son that while cleaning the home, she would lift and move the covered plates when she swept and dusted the room and furniture. She further explained, "I once felt of the plates, as they thus lay on the table, tracing their outline and shape. They seemed to be pliable like thick paper, and would rustle with a metallic sound when the edges were moved by the thumb, as one does sometimes thumb the edges of a book." Emma's participation in these miraculous undertakings did not come without great sacrifice. She chose to marry Joseph even though her father strongly opposed their courtship. And then, in the first year of their marriage, she helped Joseph obtain the Book of Mormon. From this time forward, numerous attempts were made to steal the plates, and persecution and danger continually swirled around their lives. When Emma wasn't acting as a scribe, she was often doing the domestic chores needed for the survival and comfort of those actively involved in the translation. Through all of this, she remained constant and true to her husband and the sacred relic that he was charged to protect and translate. In awe at her miraculous experiences, Emma remarked, "And though I was an active participant in the scenes that transpired, and was present during the translation of the plates, and had cognizance of things as they transpired, it is marvelous to me, a marvel and a wonder, as much so as to anyone else." Emma's service as a scribe was essential. Her witness as an intimate observer and participant of the coming forth of the Book of Mormon is convincing, and her faithfulness to the prophet Joseph Smith and to the truthfulness of the Book of Mormon is inspiring. These details help explain why the Lord chose Emma Smith as an elect lady to serve alongside her husband.
So that's just a quick summary of what is in the Know Why itself, which also talks about several other things. And it's, Emma really did do a lot to contribute. She also was with Joseph when he went to retrieve the plates from the hill Cumorah, which is actually mentioned in the New Saints volume from the church, if you've been reading that. And she tells us some great stories about the translation period and a time when Joseph was translating, and it mentioned walls in Jerusalem, and he really panicked because he didn't even know Jerusalem had walls around it. And she had to let him know, yes, there were walls around Jerusalem. It's okay. You have not been deceived. And she talks about his difficulty in pronouncing some of the names in the Book of Mormon, and how he would have to spell it out to her, and then she would tell him how to pronounce it. And all of this contributed to her testimony that the Book of Mormon was something beyond Joseph Smith's skills. And that's just one example of the many women I've got a list up here of some of the other women who contributed in some way in helping the Book of Mormon come forth, or that last one, Know Why number 433, talks about some of the women later in the early 20th century and on who have been instrumental in helping the Book of Mormon spread throughout the world. They've helped in translating the Book of Mormon into other languages and things like that. But we've really tried to make an effort to highlight some of the different ways women have contributed to what we know and understand about the Book of Mormon today. And now Jonathan's actually going to come, and Jonathan is also one of our researchers, and he's also involved in Know Whys, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about some other Know Whys we've done that highlight women within the Book of Mormon itself. So.
Thank you, Neil. So along with women that helps to bring forth the Book of Mormon, there's actually quite a few Know Whys we have about women in the Book of Mormon. This Know Why is talking about why there are not as many women in the Book of Mormon as you might think, and actually how that shows that the Book of Mormon is ancient. And do we have the video on that?
One element of the Book of Mormon that is troubling to some modern readers is that it rarely mentions women. However, when one looks at the Book of Mormon in its ancient context, this lack begins to make more sense. Here are 4 things to consider when investigating this topic. First, comparing the Book of Mormon to the Old Testament helps. While the Old Testament does mention women, the ratio is still pretty low when compared to men. And Old Testament books from time periods that are similar to the Book of Mormon also show few references to women. Second, as a military commander, Mormon devoted much of the Book of Mormon to depictions of war. Yet, like most women in much of the ancient world, pre-Columbian American women rarely participated in warfare. Thus, much of the Book of Mormon discusses an activity that women would usually not be directly involved with. Third, unlike many modern Western societies where both men and women are literate, in the ancient Near East and pre-Columbian America, it was primarily men who were literate. And lastly, both the language that the Book of Mormon was originally written in, and also the language that it was translated into, often used masculine language, including masculine pronouns. This is significant because a modern English text would likely have used gender-neutral terms. Readers of the Book of Mormon should recognize that its lack of women is largely due to its ancient context. This doesn't mean that we can't be rewarded with a deeper understanding of women from the Book of Mormon. Modern readers can find women throughout its pages who greatly influenced Nephite history, even when they are not given a prominent role or mentioned expressly. Examples include Abish, who helped convert an entire kingdom through her missionary work, or an unnamed maid who told Moroni of his enemy's war plans. Without her, the Nephites may well have lost the wars against the Lamanites, changing the course of Nephite and Lamanite history forever. And now you know why.
so with that know why, one of the main things that we talked about is that even though there aren't as many women in the Book of Mormon as we might expect, there's actually still quite a few women. We just don't tend to focus on them or notice them. And so this is from the Encyclopedia of Mormonism. In religious life, women participating in assemblies at the temple and teaching their children about God and offering sacrifice. Evidently, they were not excluded from or segregated during worship. The gospel taught by the Nephites and Christ in the Book of Mormon is addressed to all, regardless of gender, age, or descent. Baptism was offered to all men and women who believed, and women demonstrated profound faith and were tested by great sacrifice. In Ammonihah, women were burned to death with their children for refusing to denounce their faith in Christ. And so as we look at the Book of Mormon, there's actually quite a few places where even though women aren't specifically named, we should be thinking about them. But there are quite a few times where women are mentioned in the Book of Mormon, and we've brought out a lot of know-whys about that. So there's a lot of good information about Sariah. We have a know-why about Sariah's name, actually, and how that shows up in the ancient world. We have a know-why talking about the suffering of the women and children during the final battles in the Book of Mormon. There's a know-why about Abish's name and why it's significant. We have a know-why about the Lamanite daughters getting kidnapped and some interesting points about that. Once again, Lehi's party, all the women in Lehi's party and what they were doing in the wilderness. The women as part of Amulek's household and how that helps to explain a lot of what Amulek is doing. In the face-to-face event, I talked about polygamy and how actually the Book of Mormon helps to explain that. The face-to-face event the other day, we have a know-why giving more information on that. And we also have a couple know-whys helping to explain more about how the Book of Mormon helps us understand women in the Old Testament. A know-why talking about Rahab, and then a know-why talking about Ruth. So we've tried to get as much content together as we could to really help people understand the lives of people in the Scriptures, both men and women, to help it be a little bit more relatable and help people to connect with the Scriptures a little bit more. And now I'd like to turn the time over to Jasmine Rapley, and she's going to talk about a little bit more about what we're doing with Spanish Team and the app and other things like that.
Thanks. Like Jonathan said, my name is Jasmine, and I'm just going to take our last few minutes to explore, now that we've learned a little bit about what we've done with Book of Mormon Central and some of the resources it offers. I want to take us into our future and the potential that Book of Mormon Central has to bless the world. In 2017, January 2017, we launched Book of Mormon Central en Español. Now, my father's from Argentina, so this is part of my heritage, but growing up in an English-speaking home in the United States of America, I have really taken for granted the resources I have. Here in the United States of America, the church publishes everything in English instantly, because in Salt Lake, the brethren are mostly speaking English, and in General Conference, the addresses are given in English. And so I took for granted how little our brothers and sisters in other parts of the world have when it comes to church resources. And so we have taken it upon ourselves to take what we've done at Book of Mormon Central, namely our know-whys, and translating them into Spanish as fast as possible. Now, they started a year after our English site launched, but they have kept up such a pace of translation that they are almost caught up with us head to head. And it's incredible. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that the acceleration of growth on our Spanish team is incredible. I forgot to label these, but the blue line is English. We've been increasing in followers and page views pretty steadily, but Spanish from day one, they have just been skyrocketing. There is such a thirst for more resources to learn more about the Scriptures. And so we've been thrilled to see this response, and our brothers and sisters in Central and South America have also been thrilled. On the next slide, you'll see that we have quite a following across the world. This is specifically about WhatsApp, an app that's really, really popular in South America for communicating. It's a messaging app, and we have groups all over the world where they're talking about our know-whys, and they're talking about the Book of Mormon and questions they have, and really engaging on a deeper level. Also, in our Spanish app, we have had in the last year 28 million user engagements. Now, this includes all sorts of interactions on all of our different social media platforms and on the website. But it is remarkable to us to see the overwhelming response we've received from our Spanish brothers and sisters. And as Jack mentioned, we hope to do this for other languages too, so they can also receive the blessings of learning more about the Book of Mormon. Now, on the next slide, I also want to talk about our future at Book of Mormon Central. The last 3 years, we've put a lot of effort into publishing No Whys, so that we can help people understand passages of the Book of Mormon better. But these No Whys come out one article at a time, and it's hard to necessarily integrate them in your scripture study. So what we're doing is we're developing an interactive scriptures app so that you can seamlessly study the scriptures with additional resources. Now, if you can go 2 slides forward, actually go 3 slides forward. Sorry, I'm just whizzing through this. A problem we're seeing today, especially in our younger generation, my generation, is we're spending so much time on our phones, and little of that time is spent with gospel-related activities. And so we want to use this interactive scriptures app as an opportunity to combat that and to fill their time, even if they're on their phone, with worthy things like reading the scriptures. And some of the things we want to do with this app is make sure that it's audience targeted, that we make an app that people in my generation will delight in using and want to study their scriptures. We also want to make sure that it has a beautiful interface and a beautiful design so that people are excited to read, and that it has content-rich resources. Next slide. We want to do really important things like focus on Jesus Christ. And as we're thinking about this problem, how can we better focus our youth, our young adults, all members of the church on Jesus Christ when they're studying? And we came up with the idea, well, what if we highlight Jesus Christ? Make sure that every time he comes up, you can't miss it. So one of the features that we want to include in this app is red lettering, where we will highlight in some way the names of Christ wherever it pops up, quotes of Christ, whatever words he says in the Book of Mormon, and attributes. Oh, the goodness of our God. We also want to facilitate reading and make it a smooth experience to make it read more like a novel. And we also, as I mentioned, want lots of study materials. So on the next slide, you'll see that we hope to provide lots of resources, not just a commentary, but videos and images. Just like the videos we watched right now, we hope that they will be integrated in your scripture study. You click on 1 Nephi chapter 1, verse 1, and have a list of things you can study, whether it be charts or quotes from the brethren or videos. And that's basically our vision for the Interactive Scriptures app. We hope that through this we can reach a young generation, but also enrich the study of all members of the church, so that we can bring them unto Christ and help study and engage the Book of Mormon more, so that we can strengthen our testimonies of the keystone of our religion. And that's pretty much all we wanted to share with you tonight. And so I'll just let Jack close off our evening. But we do really want to thank you guys for letting us come this evening. We thoroughly enjoyed the food and the company.
Thank you, Neil and Jonathan and Jasmine. These are wonderful young people. And they're not that young. In fact, Neil and Jasmine, how long have you been married now? How many days?
Almost 2 months.
Oh, 2 months. And where did you meet? Book of Mormon Central. This is one of our proudest moments. But aren't they great? And all of the people working at Book of Mormon Central, we're trying to reach the younger people, and so we're hiring these young people and giving them a chance to use their skills. They're really well trained. Jonathan has a degree in Old Testament studies, a PhD, and Jasmine was in the Ancient Near Eastern Studies program at BYU when we happened to meet each other because of a visiting scholar who came, and we were at a dinner together, and I said, Jasmine, what are you going to be doing next year? You're graduating. She said, well, I don't know. I have a double major in Ancient Near Eastern Studies, Hebrew, and computers and web design. Now, I know that the Lord sent Oliver Cowdery to help Joseph Smith when he needed it. And I said, well, you know, just a couple of weeks ago, we launched a new organization. Would you like to be involved? And, you know, it takes a pretty brave soul to say, well, sure, how many employees are there? Well, you'll be the first. And how much money do you have in the bank? Well, we've got some promises. And anyway, it's because of the great work that these wonderful people have done that we're able to show you the things that they've accomplished in the time we've had. Now, we've got lots of other supporters. I don't know, volunteers. We probably got over 100 people involved with Book of Mormon Central. People say, so who's doing all of this? I mean, just to produce a little video like that, you know, all the artwork, the script has to be approved by me, and all kinds of other things. We've got Robert Starling here, who does a lot of the video production. We have voice talent. Sometimes you heard one man and another woman. We wanted to match a woman with some of these know-whys about women. It all has to be produced. And what you didn't see, but you can see if you go on the app or on your website, you can just go to bookofmormoncentral.org, and up will open all kinds of resources. Just go prowl around in there, and one of the things that you'll find is an archive. And we're approaching now 5,000 books or articles, full text, online, searchable, that you wonder, well, who has said anything about, and then you fill in the question that you have. How about horses in the Book of Mormon? That's a perennial question that kind of keeps trotting around, right? And people wonder, well, what's the deal? And we give you the latest information about new archaeology, new discoveries that are now being carbon dated that we think are clearly pre-Columbian horses. You'll hear about that as soon as we have the scholars ready in a position to be able to tell us reliable information. That's one thing we carefully do, is be sure that anything we put on any of this has gone through multiple checks to be sure that it's accurate. But we have all these people working on doing it, and they're wonderful. And they all have very strong testimonies of the Book of Mormon and work together. It's a real joy for me to be able to help direct some of the traffic here. But let me stop, and because I know the only thing standing between me and dessert is when we finish. But I think we said we want to finish maybe in about 10 minutes with this part of the program, but let's have some questions or reactions. Elaine, go ahead. We have a blog. People write in questions. Of course, we had interesting things that we knew. Remember back in the day when the Ensign had a little column called "I Have a Question"? Well, I know how those things were written because I wrote some of them. You start with the answer, and then you figure out, well, what's the question that people might want to ask? That really should have been called "I Have an Answer." But these are questions that people are asking all the time. And not only do we have the know-whys, but we have a Q&A. Jasmine just kind of didn't talk about that on the screen, but we have a Q&A section on Book of Mormon Central. We've identified the questions. They're like weeds in your garden. They come up every season. You pull them out, and somehow they grow back again. But generation after generation, most of the questions about the Book of Mormon have long been answered many times. So it's not a question of what's the question. We're working through them as carefully as we can, and as soon as we have good answers for them, we put the Q&A on the list. But if you have any questions that you wonder about? Or wouldn't it be a good question to do something on, do a know why on such and such? I've always wondered. Or I've noticed something really interesting about this. Or in our family home evening, one of my kids asked this question. I didn't know the answer. We'll take that. And Jonathan and I were just talking the other day about, okay, let's plan out what the next 20 know-whys will be. That's kind of where they come from. Okay? How about another? Any questions? Yes. Technical. Yeah, no, what you can do, you find through them, but especially if you get on our email list. You get an email every time a know why is posted, a new one, and you can click on it and say, am I interested in this? Yes. If you are, then go to the website, and you'll be able to find it because you have the number, the know why number, and it's the full text of the know why will be in the archive, and that is coded with topics, and you can search and organize those. So we've actually produced lists of know whys. So if you want to know all the know whys about women in the Book of Mormon, you can find those pretty easily. We're refining these lists to be more effective, but if you want a list of all of the know whys that we've done, showing how the Book of Mormon was used during the first formative 20 years of the history of the church. We've got a whole, 20 or 25 know whys on that. People don't realize what our debt is to the Book of Mormon. I mean, why do we do in the church what we do? Mostly the answer to that is because the Book of Mormon tells us to. Where do we get the baptismal prayer? 3 Nephi chapter 11. Where do we get the sacrament prayers? Moroni chapters 4 and 5. Why do we sing? Moroni 6 says that they got together and they sang. So these things validate and direct what it is that we do in the church. How do we ordain elders? How do we give the gift of the Holy Ghost? That's Moroni chapters 2 and 3. And so on and so on. There are so many ways in which the Book of Mormon has helped us, but so why is the Book of Mormon important to us? It's a part of our spiritual DNA as a church and as a people. And when you stop and think about even something like that, if Joseph Smith is just spinning a novel off the top of his head and going through all these nice stories, the Book of Mormon is much more than just a storybook, isn't it? Can you imagine an assignment that says, now I want you to come up with a 500-page book, and it's got to talk about men and also women. I know that's not currently a part of your culture, but be sure you don't forget them. And then I want you to write in Hebraic styles of writing, like chiasmus and other things like that. Kind of have to just do it subconsciously as you're dictating this. Oh, and by the way, you have to be able to quote from earlier passages that you translated a month earlier, and remember with all these disjunctive flashbacks, what year were you in when Ammonihah was destroyed, so that when you get back to the Ammonihah story 11 chapters later, it's seamless. And by the way, in the middle of all of that, give spiritual counsel to individuals about their conversion, about praying, about their private worship of God that will bring them back to His presence. And tell them about the plan of salvation. The word plan isn't even in the Bible. Plan of redemption, the plan of happiness, the plan of mercy. Plan. The word plan appears 10 times in the words of Alma to his sons to his son Corianton. That's in Alma chapters 39, 40, 41, and 42. I call it the 10 plans. It's like the 10 commandments. But if you're going to do something like that, by the way, Joseph, when you're dictating all of this, keep track of how many times you've used the word plan, because, well, that's a real crucial word. And you only say something that important a perfect number of times, which, by the way, in Hebrew culture is 10. Oh, and then don't forget that people are going to be using this book as a handbook of instructions. For organizing a church, Joseph hadn't even dreamed of starting a church when he starts translating the Book of Mormon. Okay, when we say the Book of Mormon is a marvelous work and a wonder, it is mind-boggling to put all of these pieces together. That's one of the things we just want to do, to let people know. How do you let people know how beautiful, complicated, true, precise, and everything else, hundreds of glorious adjectives, how do you get young people to appreciate it? That's our challenge. John?
Has the church approved the act for a missionary assembly?
Not generally, but at the mission president level, like in Mexico City, we have 8 missions that are using the Spanish version. In Barcelona, the mission president there tells us that he's found it very helpful for a companionship where you have one that's English speaking and another one that's Spanish speaking. How do they get along? It's pretty hard when you have a companion. It's hard to get along when you both speak the same language. It's even harder when you speak a different language. He says, I'm having them do scripture study by having them first listen to the know-why in one of the languages, Spanish, and then the two of them listen to the same thing in the other language. They learn each other's language. They have things to talk about. It's the best thing we've run into. Solved a lot of problems. But right now it's on a mission-by-mission basis. We haven't been around long enough for it to really be done on a pilot program of some kind. But I will tell you, my current calling is down in the BYU YSA 4th stake, and starting last week, every ward in every YSA stake in Utah Valley has a new organization. It's not the activities committee, it's the social media committee. And these young people, just back from their missions, they are organized in ways to now connect with people that they knew back in the mission field or high school, or building friendships and keeping in contact with each other and strengthening each other and sharing resources that answer questions that come up. And Book of Mormon Central is a part of that energy. So that's a start. We do work pretty closely with Elder Nielsen, who's in charge of the missionary program, with Elder Kim Clark in charge of the seminaries and institutes. What did the institutes give us not too long ago? All of the emails of every seminary and institute teacher in the church. And we've been emailing them so that they know what we're offering. So,
and it's worth noting that even though we don't have explicit mission commitment,
correct.
a page on the website says there's lots of great resources besides the church material to use in class and seminary ministries. Here they are, and one of them is the Book of Mormon Central.
And last year we had one institute teacher who sent us a picture of him wearing a tie that his students had given him at the end of the semester. And the tie said on it, "No why tie." Because he used why so much. Question, Jane.
I just wanted to just say a word about the beautiful, colorful, gorgeous no-why book.
Oh,
But people can buy that book and they're going to put it on the coffee table for children to look at.
very good. Covenant Communications published our first 130 know-whys in a beautiful color, bound a large format book. And you can get it at Covenant Communications, but it's nice to have a hard copy where you can just kind of flip through them and stop, and it is beautifully laid out. It's only the first 130. How many did Neil say we've done? 466. I mean, I was just reading 493, so we're already working on the next 30 no-whys. But we will be at number 500 pretty soon. We're talking to Covenant about, well, would you like to do another volume like that one? They've only sold 5,000 copies of that book. That's actually a real good print run. And they're real pleased with it. So I hope that there will be a reprint of that and others like that yet to come. Question? Yes. 5,000. That's a nice coincidence, isn't it? Yes. Question? Interesting. Neil, do you want to answer that question? Could you hear the question?
I don't know. I mean,
How the Spanish what section would be, or how the Spanish know why app? I'm not sure I understand.
So you said the in Mexico City.
Right. Well, what's the Spanish connection here? The office manager, who's a volunteer, as I am and everyone else is, this is a completely non-profit operation. But our office manager is a computer, he's in the computer business, software. He has a company called Nuvec. And he spends at least half of his life working on Book of Mormon Central. Kirk served his mission in Peru. He and I worked on farms back in the 1980s together. And now his company is in a position where he can actually do a lot of the arranging for the programmers that we hire to do this, and most of them are in Mexico City, and some are in the Philippines. We're giving them jobs. And not only that, they love working on it, and it's a good thing in their lives. But Kirk, a couple years ago, had done so much computer work in Peru that he received a medallion, a big recognition from the Peruvian president for his contributions to education and culture in Peru. So he's a really outstanding person. And by the way, some of you will remember Bob Driggs, is Jim Driggs' father. Bob Driggs was the mission president in Peru that used Kirk Magleby as his assistant to the president. So it's Kirk's energy that said, let's give it a try and let's see what we can do. I can use my programmers and we'll just start translating and see how it works. But they pulled together, again, a huge team of volunteers. One of the main people doing the management of this and checking the Spanish is in San Diego. So we've got good connections that are close at hand. Anyway, it's just been a phenomenal success. And why? I mean, how many copies of Hugh Nibley's Approach to the Book of Mormon were published in Spanish? 0. I mean, how many copies of any of, you name it, books that we just have spilling off of our bookshelves. None of these exist in Spanish. And what we do with every know-why is we quote, we footnote, we give all of these references that are in the archive. So we're opening up this whole library not only to the millennials, our younger generation, who need to catch up. It's hard for us who have been involved with this for 50 years. I mean, it's 51 years ago I discovered chiasmus in the Book of Mormon. I've been at this for half a century. But for somebody to just get on this train, when the train is moving 100 miles an hour, there's so much going on. We've got to find ways to get people on it. But it's in the Spanish-speaking world, it's even more dramatic than that. So that's where the app came from, and it's not just the What's Up now app, but it's the website. there that is a part of the sud.com, right, which is the... in Spanish too, does that kind of give you an idea of the energy behind that? Or? Okay. When we do these kinds of things, at least for me, I don't ever try to create the need. I just want to fill the need. These needs are already out there. And we're just trying to fill the gap. Help people to be able to find the things that will help them the most. So when the need exists, the marketing is really pretty easy. I mean, most advertising is there to try to make you believe you need something that you don't really need. That's not our problem. And so we're trying to fill that need. Okay, one more question. What'd you think? For those of you who've been on the website, the app, you like it? Can you share it with all of your Facebook friends, with your family? It's easy to do. But the way that this will succeed, in many respects, it's a numbers game. Because all the numbers of these views, we showed you how many Facebook followers do we have? That number is public knowledge. And the bigger that number, the more people say, this is for real. I want to be a part of this. I can share this as a teenager with my friends because I'm not the only one who thinks this. Look at all these people. So generating that momentum is a huge contribution to what we're doing. And when we talk to donors and say, would you like to help? The first question they ask is, well, is my money going to do any good here? Is it making an effect? How many people are you reaching? Well, the more that we are in fact reaching, the more this will be able to succeed. You can help in that way, and it's pretty simple to just share it with people that you know will move it along. So thank you for this wonderful opportunity to be with you. And Jan, thanks for the testimony. It was your sister, wasn't it? Yes. I wish she could be here, but I think we all share that testimony of the truthfulness of the Book of Mormon. And I bear you my testimony of its truthfulness, and that in the plan of salvation, it was promised long ago that something would happen. A sign would be given that we would know that the Lord had set his hand a final time to be sure that the gospel could go to every nation, kindred, tongue, and people, and that the ordinances of the gospel of baptism all the way through the temple would be available to every person in this life or in the spirit world, so that the world would be not void and desolate at his coming. I testify that the Book of Mormon is that sign, and that it is a wonderful, wonderful work. Wondrous, miraculous, beautiful, and amazing. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.